Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Why No One Plays. It's a series where I like to discuss champions in League of Legends that rarely see much play, if any, in both the pro scene and solo queue nowadays. Maybe they used to have a moment to shine back then, but around now, seeing these champs, it's a pretty interesting sight to say the least. So, for this episode, I want to talk about Kog'Maw, the 180 carry that just never gets to be popular, because if he did, oh, you better believe it's going to be an instant bot lane difference meta all over again, and as top main, I don't want that to happen. But before we get into the video, let's go through protocol, starting with the disclaimer. To whom it may concern, this series is not meant to bash Kog'Maw and say he's a bad champion, nor discourage anyone from playing him. And for everyone who does play and or main Kog'Maw, do not take this video as me hating on the champion. The purpose behind Why No One Plays is to create discussion over possible reasons as to why certain champions do not see as loyal or as wide of a following as others. He's a pretty interesting take on the marksman role, to say the least, and in my personal opinion, I would like to argue that he's what marksman should be. High damage, long range, but low mobility and low defense. Feels like Riot kind of forgot how AD carries are meant to be designed, what with Kai'Sa and Aphelios being able to do 90 different things and needing to get nerfed like 10 times each. That isn't an exaggeration, by the way. I think Aphelios is about to have his 8th nerf or something like that. Anyway, that little jab aside, Kog'Maw has always been that ADC that people only bring out if and when they have a dual partner who plays Lulu or some other enchanter support, but for the most part you rarely see anyone actively playing Kog'Maw as an AD carry. Maybe there might be an edge case where you find a Kog going mid full AP, but that's even rarer. There's only one time I think in the past 3 years where he was put up in the front as one of the best AD carries in the game, but that was from I think the Ardent Censer meta, not so much him being strong. It's just that he's the champion best suited for Ardent Censer when it was hilariously overpowered. So why is Kog'Maw the least played ADC of all time? I spent some time digging into his profile and history to see if I could pinpoint an issue, and from what I can tell, this is less about his actual design and more about his belonging in the game, or rather, how he doesn't belong in the game, at least not the way it is right now. Kog'Maw was definitely one of the earlier champions to come into the game. In fact, prior to him, the other AD carries were Ezreal, Corki, Twitch, Tristana, Sivir, and Ashe. That's it, just those 6. And if you were to compare him to any of them, Kog'Maw definitely stands out as the most damage-oriented and least mobile. Normally I would cover a champion's kit towards the midway point of the video, but with Kog, I want to cover them right now since I think it's important. Let's start with this passive, Icathian Surprise. It turns Kog'Maw into a living time bomb upon death and explodes to deal massive true damage in an area. The point of this was to act as a deterrent for enemy champions to engage on him, because if they don't have the right means of getting in and out of Kog'Maw's range quickly, they're going to be eating a heavy punish. Simply put, this is the if I go down, I'm taking you down with me passive, and I think it's really unique considering the only other champion to have a passive like this was Zyra, but she got reworked to no longer have it, making Kog the only one to have a suicide attack passive. Karthus doesn't really count since he's more of an active participant even while dead, as in like he's a fully functional champion even for a short period of time. Caustic Spittle gives him free attack speed, it's always nice, and the active shoots a blob of goo that damages and reduces both armor and magic resistance. It's an ability like this that gives us an indication that he prioritizes death by 1,000 cuts and not hard-hitting shots like Jhin or Caitlyn, so this is perfect for him. The reason why shredding armor and magic resist is more suited for someone like Kog'Maw, even though damage reduction in this game is a percent amount and not flat, is because Kog'Maw prioritizes several hits so he can get a lot more shots in a shorter amount of time than the likes of other AD carries. Bio-Arcane Barrage gives him a huge boost in attack range and also the ability to deal max health damage per hit, which further solidifies his role as an on-hit attacker. With his W and Q alone, you can tell that he's not exactly a crit build AD carry like Caitlyn nor spell user like Ezreal. This, in fact, actually makes him the only pure on-hit ADC in the game, and before you mention champions like Kai'Sa and Vayne who do build on-hit items like Winsu's, they mostly build it for the sake of proccing their passive as much as humanly possible, not so much for the sake of each individual shot doing a lot of damage. You rarely see them building any other on-hit items besides Gwinsu's Rageblade and maybe Blade of the Ruined King. Void Ooze, it shoots out a large area of slime, or rather he vomits it out, and it creates a large slowing field in front of him. Just by looking at this ability, you can tell it's meant for one of two purposes: to keep enemies locked in place for Kog'Maw to free fire, or to use as cover fire to slow down pursuers. Since he's next to no mobility in his kit, this is a very much needed addition, and it also fits his theme of being this really grotesque looking bug that likes to throw up a lot. Lastly, Living Artillery, his ultimate, a long-range snipe tool to finish the job on anyone who was lucky enough to survive with a sliver of health left. Perfect choice for ultimate in my opinion, since it forces enemy champions to consider a second range of threat outside of his auto attack range. And because Kog'Maw has no mobility built into his kit, it's a great fit for sniping down anyone who barely just got away. Kog'Maw is probably the first champion I talk about in this series whose lack of play rate doesn't directly stem from his designer kit, rather internal and external factors surrounding the game as a whole, not necessarily from him. See, he's basically an AD carry taken to the absolute extreme, right? If caught out in a bad situation, there's very little he can do to put up a decent fight against the likes of a Rengar, Camille, Renekton, or LeBlanc. Conversely, if he has even 5 seconds to fire at will, he can single-handedly win a team fight for your team. He takes the strengths and weaknesses of an AD carry and hyperbolizes them both ways. Extremely high risk, but extremely high reward, in concept. He has a perfectly normal kit and a well-organized one from my perspective. Every ability he has complements each other, building off of each other and trying to cover each other's shortcomings as best they can. The previous champs I talked about in this series like Rumble, Aurelion Sol, Nico, and Skarner had something about their 4 abilities and passive that just didn't work too well. Either one of them was clunky, out of place, or there was just some limiting factor to their kit that really didn't sync well with other players. On the other hand, Kog'Maw is similar to Udyr in that they're both champions that just haven't aged all too well. See, Summoner's Rift from a design point of view has changed a lot. The philosophy on new champions is for each one to be near completely self-sustainable. Yes, even Yuumi. By that I mean the new champions have little to no reason to care about anyone but themselves, and if they do have applications with their teammates, it's only a bonus, not really a caveat. Here's a few quick examples. Sylas's peak effectiveness is based on how powerful the enemy team's ultimates are, but he can still do a lot on his own with basic abilities even if the enemy team has a lot of pointless ults like Udyr, Elise, Nidalee, Chase, or something like that. Zoe can punish enemy usage of summoner spells, but she doesn't really need them in the first place to completely waste squishy targets from 5 screens away. Rakan and Xayah both power each other up but function perfectly fine, if not on occasions better with other partners, which is makes you wonder who has to sleep on the couch then. Tahm Kench can vary his abilities and save them from certain death, but he can also destroy 1v1 dueling specialists by licking them to death. Kalista has an entire focus on being next to her Oathsworn, but 9 times out of 10 she's usually on her own just cutting juggernauts out of existence. Pyke. I do not need to say anymore, you guys already know what I'm talking about. A support that can hyper carry. 200 plus years of experience, Riot Games. Anyway, all of the new champions have a revolving gimmick or central playstyle that at first glance looks like it's situational and relies on specific circumstances, when in reality they function perfectly fine even without it. Kog'Maw is what an AD carry is meant to be, an extremely powerful asset that requires enabling and protection to get the job done. But we've evolved to the point where League is no longer 5 teammates trying to coordinate a winning strategy, and more every player for themselves. The majority of other AD carries have been reworked to be able to hold their own in as many situations as possible. Ezreal, Ashe, Twitch, Caitlyn, Sivir, Misfortune, Vars, and all of the new ones straight up just abandoned the whole notion altogether, like Lucian, Kai'Sa, Aphelios, and Xayah. In fact, I plan to make a video about that later on. Because Kog'Maw is one of the only AD carries that legitimately needs to be protected at all times, there's an inherent need for players to rely on their teammates, something I covered with Skarner. Now, before any of you say in the comment section, yes, I am aware you can solo 1v9 on Kog'Maw even with 4 headless chickens for teammates, but that is every champion. Statistically speaking, Kog'Maw is more successful if the support or the team as a whole play around him, or even have their champions picked specifically for him, like Lulu, Karma, Ivern, Orianna, stuff like that. If you take a look at all the times Kog'Maw has been very popular, it's usually because something else has changed. In fact, even when marksmen were reworked and Kog'Maw was able to reach 5.0 attack speed, you would still rarely see him unless he was paired with the Lulu or Janna. Other cases were the ardent sense of meta or people just realizing he was really powerful, but since no one played him, it took forever for that to happen. He embraces the role of AD carry more than any other marksman, unfortunately to a fault. His kit is the most normal we'll see of any champion on this list, but his lack of play rate is attributed to the fact that he doesn't belong in League of Legends in terms of current player values. No one wants to play a champion that fundamentally needs to rely on anyone but themselves. Kog'Maw cannot solo carry games. This was even stated time and time again in the LCS that whenever there's a Kog'Maw in Champ Select, the shoutcasters talk about how much you need to protect the Kog'Maw. And even in pro play, Kog'Maw is rarely picked if at all. You would think in organized high-level play, fully utilizing a literal walking machine gun would be easy to do. But even in pro play, they would prioritize less team-reliant carries like Xayah, Kai'Sa, and Aphelios. When I said that he doesn't belong in League of Legends, what I was getting at is that League is too impatient of a game for him. In almost every situation, Kog'Maw takes time to get going. By that I don't mean that he's a late game scaler, I'm saying that he physically requires time to do anything. Attack, walk around, anything. The reason why crit 80 carries are more popular than pure on-hit and the reason why Riot doesn't produce on-hit anymore is because pure on-hit 80 carries take too much time to do anything. This game is way too fast in tempo, especially in Season 10 where the average game length has significantly decreased thanks to Dragon Souls and Elder Dragon buff being the literal game-winning objective. Players recognize this, and seeing that there's almost no reason to pick Kog'Maw, the most traditional 80 carry, over someone faster and more self-sufficient like Kai'Sa, whom I consider to be basically an infinitely better Kog'Maw by trading in the increased range to basically deal the same amount of damage, only with the ability to move around very quickly. It's sad to see how the epitome of what an 80 carry is supposed to be is ironically the least played in terms of cumulative history and by none of his own fault. In my opinion, he captures the very essence of a marksman, extremely high damage output, high range, low mobility, and fragile defenses, but players don't like that. So this was slightly different than my usual why no one plays since I'm not proposing a solution to try to fix this since from a design standpoint there's nothing really wrong with Kog'Maw. I think he's perfectly fine as a champion but unfit for League of Legends in its current state. Unlike Skarner who's reliant on his teammates because of a singular gimmick, Kog'Maw is too reliant on his teammates because he represents the traditional definition of a marksman, and I think that's just more a case of how much the game has changed compared to the early seasons. That being said, a rating would be much appreciated if you enjoyed this video, and if you have any opinions on Kog'Maw, either positive or negative, or if you want to offer any potential changes we can make to him, I'd love to read them in the comment section below. Be sure to check out my playlist on other champions I cover in the video description, and if you want to see more like this, then I hope you can subscribe for more content in the future, but for now that's going to be it. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you again soon in the next video. Take care.